Greetings and welcome back to the Saroth the Mage experiment. I had some issues there with my microphone. I believe it's now working. And then my camera went down for some reason. And I still can't see a damn thing. Comments. Okay, so hopefully the people who were here before will come back. So you can't hear me now, can you? Greetings, Groucho. So, can you hear me now? Tommy, can you hear me? Hear me now? Yes, I can hear me now. We have audio, yes indeed we do. So, tonight I will be kind of discussing Magick, but although it was a massively influential book on me as a youngster, around about the same time as I was reading Liber Null and Psychonaut, I'd completely forgotten most of the book. I mean, the Nema's work is continued by the Horus Maat Lodge. Denny Sargent, who I had on just a few weeks ago, is now the kind of outer head, and I saw on Facebook today he's been a bit unwell, but he's back, so that's good. I'd also like to give prayers to Jake Stratton-Kent, who is still not out of the woods. So, you know, he's been such a massive influence on occultism on both sides of the Atlantic, I'd say. Very brilliant man. Congratulations to Carol Stratton-Kent. Yeah. So Magick, I believe, was written in, the experience that she had was the reception of Liber Pene Pranumbra. It was done, I think the first time I became aware of Nema was through an article called, I'm sure it was called Crows in a Cornfield, but I searched it today and I couldn't find it. So let's see if I can find that in my notes. My notes are absolutely all over the shop. I even did I know you can't see very well with this thing, but I'll even draw a little tree of life to remind myself where it was, because Nema uses the tree of life as a kind of framework for her magical work, and she goes right through from 10, which is Malkuth, which is Earth, to 9, which is Yesod, which is the moon, and she goes right through all the levels up to Keter, number 1, which is the crown, describing how a magician works on each level. I think there's a quotation that so newbies starts in Malkuth. So you've got to use a banishing ritual, the same as Liber. I mean, I think a banishing ritual is pretty universal in Magick, that you use it to create a sacred and safe space. Should be visualized in 3D, and she said newbies shine like beacons on the astral plane and could possibly attract entities. She describes the astral plane as in the plane of Yesod, which reminds me a bit of the sublunar spirits and all that. But so actually, she says you're working in every human lives on all 10 levels, though most are unaware. When you first practice Magick, you activate conscious participation in Yesod, which is populated by ghosts, dreams, nightmares, unresolved negative emotions, psychic vampires, who can be fellow magicians and all that, interdimensional alien monsters, who we might call ultra-terrestrials, primitive survival urges, which she later goes on to describe as the forgotten ones, which is very interesting, which I will read a WordPress blog towards the end. I don't think it's going to be a long one tonight, maybe half an hour. Isn't that a shame that I had like loads of people in chat and my microphone misfunctioned and only good old Groucho's come back? I'll play a little bit and try and see if anybody else comes in. I could always share the link, couldn't I? Can I? YouTube keeps changing it. Oh yeah. So, excuse me, I'll just copy this to Facebook. Maybe I'll get some more people in chat. Live. Now. Paste. Boom. I mean, it doesn't really matter how many live viewers I've got, because I rarely talk to anyone anyway once I get in my little bubble. But I was going to try and engage more with the chat tonight. So let me get back to that. Live chat. Oh, yes. CW Chanter is here in spirit, which is not bad. I'd love to have you in your full human form, but as it's Magick, I suppose it's your astral form. So yes, I will play this one. To that one, but they're all pining for my dear Solar Star. I wonder if she still watches. Anyway, so yeah, back to the notes. So you go to Yesod in your astral practice, and you're accosted by all these nasty things. vampires, interdimensional alien monsters, primitive survival urges, black lodges, etc. Banishment secures your space and others. I mean, I've often thought when I'm practicing magic, I didn't do it at Stars at all because she had two, children, and I didn't want them affected by my crazy magical doings. But it could affect my neighbours. So a banishing ritual prevents the energy from kind of leaking out and infecting everything. So after banishing, imagine the 3D space that you've created shrinking around you to almost form like a suit of astral armour, so you can walk about and still be protected. And I used to notice when I was doing banishing rituals and stuff daily as part of the Golden Dawn curriculum, which I eventually tired of. But I did do it for pretty much daily for 2 or 3 years, and I noticed when I would do a banishing ritual and go out, I felt like there was a glow around me. People would look at me, dogs would come up to me. It makes you shine somehow. Banishment as ordeal and initiation. I think you've mentioned this, CW, about the embarrassment of doing a magic ritual. You might be dressed. I've got a white sort of ankle length robe. I wanted a hood, but it's like a cassock, and you do feel like a bit of an arsehole at first, shouting out all these strange words, doing the gestures, but the embarrassment is like a mini ordeal that you've got to go through, because the idea of ordeals is very much in line with initiation and ritual. Ritual, as I've said many times before, is really designed to throw off all the inauthentic parts of yourself, that they might be a job that you kind of make lots of money in, or a relationship which you think you love. Nema obviously uses thelemic concepts a lot. The true will is one. She believes in the true will. She believes in what else does she believe in? I'm not very well prepared. Okay, so you must fully engage and believe in the ritual's efficacy, or it just ain't going to work. And even like the Arbitel, any grimoire I can think of says that the magician must totally believe, which is hard for a kind of skeptical type like me. Absolutely part and parcel of the process. Hello to Oswald. Excellent. Yes, Jazzmaster. No, it is a Jazzmaster. It's just a very cheap Squire Affinity, because I've never, this is my first ever guitar. I absolutely adore it. I play it morning, noon and night, and since I lost my baby, it's been a great comfort. Okay, so Nema recommends banishing daily. Obviously, most people do, and meditate twice a day for around 20 minutes. Mantra meditation is the form of the feather and flame ritual. So this is a ritual where you have a candle, maybe like a foot in front of you in the table, and a feather right up to your mouth. And you chant the Ipsos, I'll get to that in a minute, mantra. You want the feather to move, but you don't want the candle to, you don't want to affect so it's controlling your breath. It's again, like I talked about in my Liber Null and Psychonaut show, that's a form of slowing down mental processes, inhibition, rather than excitation. There's another, it's not called inhibition, it's called something else that I can't quite remember. So she says, this is a quote, "Magic is a circuit. You explore each level of decreasing density," so that's going up the Kabbalistic tree of life. until you learn enough about and through a given level to bring your new realizations back to Malkuth, which is planet Earth, which she calls level 10. I prefer just to call them by their regular Kabbalistic names. Malkuth is Earth, Yesod, Tifereth's the sun, you know. So the return to Malkuth is earthing your magic. So without bringing it back into material existence, it really just stays like a thought form, and it doesn't really achieve very much. Your magic, without earthing, the circuit remains open and no power flows through to do the work. And then she goes on to describe 4 types of ritual, which are daily practice, obviously, although I do not do any form of daily practice or meditation now. So you've got your daily practice, LBRP, if it was the Golden Dawn or Thelema, there'd be extra rituals to do. Liber Resh, of course, is a brilliant way of tuning yourself magically. You hail unto thee who art Ra, thy rising, solar bark and all that stuff. So you do it at sunrise, lunchtime, sunset and midnight. That's a very good practice to get into. So apart from your daily practice rituals, you've got seasonal practices, which she calls the wheel of the year, obviously including solstices and equinox, but she includes the cross quarters, which are October the 31st, which is Samhain, which I'm going to read a little bit about from my own blog, February the 2nd, April the 30th, and August the 1st. And also significant anniversaries, lesser feasts, greater feasts of people, your birthday, your anniversary, all that kind of stuff. And these serve to orient you to the space-time conditions of level 10, Malkuth. And then there's another form of ritual which is called initiation or information seeking, which is you would do an invocation. She doesn't mention evocation, which is strange. Most magicians nowadays concentrate on evoking spirits. Invoking is bringing the god into yourself. Evoking is bringing it into your dimension, so you can ask it for stuff or ask it questions. She may well mention it somewhere in the book, but I kind of skipped through the all the levels. You've got reception, which is kind of channeling, trances, divinations, no mind, invocations of god forms, and forces. Interestingly, as I kind of agree with, although I still waver, that Maat is called a netter or a neter. I think it's a netter, which are not so much gods with a personality that can be worshipped, but they're more like an abstract principle. Like Maat is truth, justice, that kind of thing. Maat, when in ancient Egyptian religion, when you died, Maat was the one who placed your heart on the scales, and if it was heavier than your feather with her feather with sin, you'd be immediately gobbled up by Sebek, is it the crocodile? Or there's another one called Anet, which is a kind of crypto animal. She does recommend Liber Resh. There's three categories. You're an initiate, which I would be because I've done my solo initiation. You've got an adept, which is somebody that's pretty good, and then you've got a priest who has attained great wisdom. She also mentions a thing called food magic, which is every time you're preparing food, be thankful, be mindful, really, because food contains energy that keeps us alive. So, it's kind of like saying grace. It's acknowledging that the earth, which I like about Magick, is it's very earth-based, very primal. It kind of reminds me of Denny Sargent's werewolf magic, when you're finding that animal self, bypassing all the bullshit, the duality of the human mind, which natters in one direction, and then the will and the mind compete and nothing is achieved. Going deeper into your kind of the oldest part of the brain is a fantastic magical practice, which I heartily recommend, because as modern Western people, we spend too much time in the internal dialogue, and that's why we need inhibitory practices, that's the word, to switch them off sometimes. And obviously the opposite of that, there's two types of gnosis: inhibitory, where you're meditating, quieting the mind, using mantras, and then there's the excitatory rituals or practices which get you up to a high state of excitement. Each method leads to the same kind of no mind. I've always found large amounts of alcohol and drugs to be very efficient in that. Not that I'm encouraging anyone. And then she talks about this, the Ganges oration. Ganges, or Ganges, is a very sacred river in India. Hail to thee, O Mother Ganges, who flows ever around the world and returns ever to thy source. Purify us now. I pray thee for the ongoing ritual of life. Hare Hare Ganja. Ganga, it might be. She also advises, as everyone does, to keep a magical journal. I do keep a journal, but I wouldn't say it's entirely magical. It's just the contents of my mind poured out onto the page. But I do think that's good to exteriorize your thoughts, so you don't get too obsessed with little minor things. So the astral plane, which she places in Yesod, which I guess is the moon, which is a kind of natural place for an astral plane to be, if it could be said to have a physical location. That's where you go in sleep, dreams, in daydreams, and if you can perfect it, in lucid dreaming. She also calls lucid dreaming envisioning or imaging. The mage must imagine the image of desire. The linguistic connections bespeak a reality. You need conscious awareness of desired change, So if you're trying to achieve something, you really need to visualize it in every aspect. Desired change as much as possible. Depth and texture. Exactly, yeah. So then another interesting example is the astral temple. So the astral temple is something that we did with our little THOTH group, which we could never quite decide what it meant. The Hermetic Order, And I mentioned last week, I think, I figured out the houses of the holy, Thoth. So, that's a bit of Jimmy Page magic for you. So, the astral temple, she suggests, is a way of strengthening your awareness of your, to me, the astral plane is just your imagination plus. When the very first book I read on magic was David Conway's Occult Primer when I was very young, 12, 13 maybe, got it out of the school library. I don't know how that got there. They must have thought it was like, I mean, no way are they going to give you an occult handbook in secondary school. But I got a hold of it, and it described the astral plane as being very real, like a place that you would have to kind of project to, but as I've said, it's a lot more nuanced than that. So Nema suggests getting a permanent place of work on the astral plane. And you do this by doing a banishing ritual in Malkuth, which is earth, but also imagine Yesod, and in your mind's eye you see yourself doing the same actions as you're doing on earth, but you're surrounded in this grey fog. The grey fog starts to once you've done your banishing ritual, your physical body sits down, but in your imagination, in the astral zone, you're still standing up. Grey smoke starts to filter up, and then you shape it into foreground, middle ground, background. So I think of it as like designing a computer game or something, which is interesting because Nema does mention modems and the internet, and so it must have been the early 80s before she'd written, because in 1974 I don't think anyone would have had a clue about modems and stuff. I may be wrong. So you can imagine your temple as anything from a mud hut to a castle to a spaceship. You're only limited by your imagination on that one. And you build it up carefully. Me and Lato did this for our Thoth group. We had like a pyramid in funnily enough, a mauve desert, which ties in with Kenneth Grant, who wrote the introduction to Magick. And it was a pyramid which we could enter, and then there were like these pools that we could submerge ourselves in. And I think the fact that you're working with a partner reinforces the reality of what on your own could just be described as a daydream. But once you start to explore this with a partner in meditation, also note down what it looks like, and any feelings you have about the place, to furnish it as you would. It's a really great way of having a fantastic working space, which you can visualize quite easily. If I shut my eyes, I can see maybe a massive room in a castle with gorgeous Persian rugs and torches attached to the wall, fantastic paintings. And she suggests, or she tells you, that you also need a door to the larger, more common astral plane, which we share with everyone, like a Jungian collective unconscious. Like I say, Kenneth Grant called it the mauve zone, William Burroughs called it interzone, Castaneda I think called it the Nahual. We actually did a show on that. Sam did Kenneth Grant, I did Burroughs, and Baz did Castaneda. We came to the conclusion that they were all the same place. They were the astral plane, but individuated to each. Interzone was totally Burroughsian because it had mugwumps and weird drugs and all that kind of stuff. So she recommends that before you attempt to contact any entities or spirits, that you have this secure astral temple, which is kind of like a place of refuge and safety. You can have loads of weapons and stuff. The only limit is your imagination. So do banishing in Malkuth, imaging, doing it in the blank grey fog after your banishing ritual. Sit down but remain standing in Yesod. Feel pressure on the soles of the feet as the fog solidifies. Beneath your feet, sorry. And I'm sitting again, you can imagine a forest, ancient Egypt, outer space, a different planet, anywhere you'd fantasize about living doing magic. When you choose, see the fog gain texture, colour and solidity in a wave radiating from beneath your feet. The astral plane is absolutely plastic and only limited by imagination. Create foreground, midground and background in an infinite sphere and write a detailed description in your magical journal, because you want to remember the things that you've got there, because each time you visit it kind of strengthens the physicality of the place. So we're going on to the background of Nema. I think she was just an American hippie type woman who got into magic by reading Aleister Crowley in a shop called The Dawn of Light in 1972. And by 1974, I believe she joined a group called the Cincinnati chapter of the Crowned and Conquering Child, CCCC, which is a cool name. Obviously, Crowned and Conquering Child is Horus. It's a very Crowleyan expression, so they are working through the idea of the Aeon of Horus, but somehow, I think it was Frater Achad, one of Crowley's disciples, after he died, declared that it was a dual Aeon, and Maat was also there. I don't know how they came up with that. But Aeonics is very interesting, that they say the first Aeon was of Isis, the mother, where males hadn't figured out human reproduction and how it worked. They just thought that women miraculously came up with these little babies. Obviously they were having sex, but they didn't equate it with childbirth. And then the age of Osiris starts when one of them notices, hey, I've got red hair, that kid's got red hair, and I slept with that woman 9 months ago. So they reckon that beckoned in the Aeon of Horus, which was all about, Horus is a god of the dead. He was assassinated by good old Set, and he's the Lord of the Dead, so it's all about sacrifice. So, Jesus Christ is a very Aeon of Osiris sort of figure. And the Golden Dawn work itself is very Aeon of Osiris. It's kind of Christian, to be honest. Pretty much. Definitely Christian. But so are many grimoires. I think it's a lot of times it's a Christian veneer to prevent the Inquisition and stuff. But the Aeon of Horus, now me and Richard Cole have discussed this at great length. Please check out Richard T. Cole, he's fabulous. He believes that Crowley basically faked the whole reception story for the 1904 reception of the Book of Law, and I think he's proved it beyond doubt, really. But I still don't think it invalidates Liberal. However Crowley came up with that, it's the ALW cipher came from it. It's given so much inspiration to occultists. I don't generally like Crowley's poetry, but Liberal there's something rather special about that book. So we're in the Aeon of Horus, although Bobby, Temple Babylon Coronzon, has got different ideas. I'll have to we'll talk about that when they come on the show very soon. I can't see, this is what happens when you start a show, don't have audio, you can't remember if I'm repeating myself, but did I tell you Don Webb from the Temple of Set is coming on? Also Orly Stewart, who's quite a famous American artist and occultist. I've got Dave Lee, original member of the Illuminates of Thanateros. Thanatos, which is death, Eros, which is sex and death inexorably linked. I have also got, who else have I got? Oh, Temple Babylon Coronzon coming on for a big group show. I've got, the channel is cooking at the moment, actually. Right, I will look at chat for a minute, because Oswald's always got interesting things to say. At the start of the Magick experiment, I broke a string on my acoustic, and I've been too broke, lazy to buy an invention, so I invented DAGDA tuning. Sounds very interesting. The guitar playing you sent me was excellent, you know. I only started tinkering in April, so I've got a long way to go. Yeah, I've heard of the Eighth Sphere. Dark Journalist goes on about it all the time. Yeah, Steiner was interesting. I find some of his ideas extremely far out, but I mean, it isn't all magical thought far out. Hi Maggie from Classic Angels and Magic. She is one of my biggest supporters, and she's given me a ton of subscribers. There's like a family of 6, the Holmes, and they all follow and comment, and it's good at the moment. Oswald Spengler, I missed the other stream, so would appreciate any updates. Updates regarding the channel, you mean, Oswald? So, like I say, Don Webb, ex-head of Temple of Set. So Set's a really interesting figure in Magick. I'd kind of neglected him because he is so associated with the American left-hand path scene, which I originally, when I wrote to Don Webb, I said, I'm interested in American Satanism, because I am, but I think America and Britain have very different magic cultures when it comes to Satanism and stuff like that. Satanism really didn't take off here, and I think because when it was really rising in the late 60s, early 70s, we had chaos magic, and because we're such a secular country here, I mean, church attendance is virtually nil, apart from like the evangelical, but no Aberdonians go to an evangelical church, or very few. We've got a lot of Polish people going to the Catholic Church, which is just across the road where I used to leave my offerings to Hecate. And it's generally young African students and that go to the evangelical stuff. So Scotland is pretty godless, and I like it that way. Okay, so where was I? So yeah, in fact, I'm not sure if that's the most interesting bit. Basically, just to give Nema some background, they did a working at a place called Oz Farm with about 30 people there. There was drumming, they were all dancing around in a circle, and one of her magical partners sensed another presence in the circle. This turned out to be a magus from the future called Aton, who I'll go into in the next time I do Maat Magic, because I've really had to hurriedly do notes because I was going to do a live stream last night. Friday nights are too tiring, so from now on I'm going to try and do a live stream every Saturday night, because I've got the afternoon to relax, do a bit of reading, not so tired after work. So the working was a time travel working. 30 magicians who apparently had been together in a previous incarnation in the 1700s Alsace-Lorraine area, which I think is the border of Germany and France. The aim was to push self-awareness to a time in prehistory when preparing for the destruction of an island nation. So I've put Atlantis? No, not quite sure what she means. Someone called SMCH sent some extra person, a magus, and Nema believes that they created a vacuum which allowed this magus called Aton to visit from the future. 2 weeks later, she was given 2 black feathers by one of her magical group. She was meditating between the 9th and the 10th, between Malkuth and Yesod, and she heard a voice in her mind say, "Call your weapons." So in her mind, she moved to the astral altar, called the astral versions of her wand, her sword, her cup, and her pentacle, which are the 4 tarot suits and the 4, basic tools of the magician. I've got a hazel wand, I've got my big choppers up there, I've got a pentacle, a golden dawn one, but I can't show you anything when I've got this black screen on, because it just and I've also got a cup, so that's all you need. Oh yeah, and I was going to mention, when I was in Edinburgh, which after the whole trip was lots of psychedelics, lots of cannabis. We went to Roslin Chapel, we saw all the carvings and heard the history of the Sinclair family, who were involved with the Knights Templar, I believe. Another person I'm getting on is a friend of mine called Chris Peterson, who has amazing knowledge. He's been doing Eden Trails, I think it's called. So he does tours of sacred sites all around Scotland. He's been to the Callanish Stones in Stornoway, where we were. He goes to all over Scotland, and he's an absolute expert. He's got some very interesting ideas on a thing called the Roslin, which is like I said, oh, is that a ley line? And he was like, kinda, in his mysterious way. So he's going to be a great show. Scottish, talking about, because in the trip that I had at Spey Bay, it was again obsessively Viking, pagan, Odin, and I see these beautiful big black crows everywhere I go now. Every time I see one, I think Odin, the All-Father, and I got the phrase Odinburgh in my head. I actually, after the trip, Lato voice recorded me like a debriefing, because you forget so much, and when you're right out of it and balanced enough to start talking, you remember so much more. So I'd recommend everybody that does trips where you get the voice, and this is something Nema mentions as well, although she doesn't link it with psychedelics as far as I know. The voice will actually tell you stories, sometimes lies, sometimes flattery, tricksy. The mushrooms are tricksy. They tend to cover you in honorifics and call you this and son of this and all that, but I don't entirely swallow that stuff. Okay, so, yes, the reason I mentioned this shop in Edinburgh is it's got beautiful swords. There's another one on pretty much the same street that sells amazing crystals and fossils. Some are like 30 million years old, like simple sea shell type creatures and stuff. So if you ever want a magical sword, go to, I can't remember the street it's on. It's in central Edinburgh. You can't miss it. It's right on I think it's on the Royal Mile. It's very touristy. You can get a really beautiful sword for like 130 quid. I thought there'd be much, much more. But you don't need fancy equipment. You just have to imbue the equipment you have with care, love, and a special kind of attention. Like I treat my guitar, I clean it with a cloth, I polish it, I stroke it. I love it. So she hears this thing, gather your weapons, and she saw a white flame hovering. This is in her imagination, kind of, a white flame above the altar, and then just a speck of black appears. The speck of black then expands till the flame is black. Black engulfs the temple, and she finds herself hanging in space with the stars. And Set is actually jumping about a bit. Don Webb associates Set with the Big Dipper. Nema associates Set with Saturn, which I'm not sure about, and calls him the Lord of Time. I would say Set is more the Lord of Chaos and unpredictability and deprogramming. I like Set, actually. So she's hanging there in space, and then she has the vision, and she receives you would call it a Class A document in Thelema or Crowley would, which is an entirely channeled text, which is quite complex. It's called Liber Pene Penumbra. It has gods Nu, who is Nuit, Had, who is Hadit, Pan, Babylon. It has a bee, a vulture, which are two important concepts in Magick. She talks of warrior priests, of Rahur Kuit, of Heru Pa Krath, Shaitan. So I was going to kind of try and get the message of the Liber Pene Penumbra across, but it's far too complex. Read it yourselves and see what you make of it. To know, to will, to dare, and to keep silent comes up, which are the secrets of the Sphinx, which is known to Hermeticism. Also, she mentions lion and eagle, which are alchemical terms. And she got the word ipsos, which is very important. The word of the 23rd path. Its number is 56, and it channels through Andromeda and Set. And she also includes good old Thelemic standbys like do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. She shows it to her friend Frater Ariel, who says the world isn't ready for this yet. Then the voice tells Nema to send a copy to Kenneth Grant, the famous crazy occultist whose gematria is a form of excitatory gnosis in itself, because he doesn't pause. If you've ever read a Kenneth Grant book, when he starts to get into his gematria, it's just a long kind of stream of consciousness. It's a trip in itself to read a Kenneth Grant book. And he was very interested in LPP. My last beer of the evening. So she writes to Kenneth Grant, and Grant writes back asking how LPP was received. And for a while, she actually joined the Typhonian OTO. Now, the Typhonian OTO has links to the Temple of Set, as Set, Typhon were kind of conjoined in this syncretic magic of Egypt when the Greeks came. Very fascinating. I'd like to do a show on syncretism in magic and how it's just absolutely par for the course. God forms that were similar were mashed together. Cultures. What a wonderful time to be alive it must have been in kind of Alexander the Great's, Ptolemy's Egypt, when in Alexandria, before Hypatia was stoned to death. A real pagan centre of knowledge and understanding. Kenneth Grant included Maat in The Night Side of Eden, Outside Circles of Time, and at the time of Nema writing, she believes Kenneth Grant is discussing Liber Pene Penumbra in Beyond the Mauve Zone, which is a great book. And again, I say we did a show on the Mauve Zone, Interzone, and the Nahual of Castaneda being the same place, which I believe they are. Maat is a daughter of Ra. Her symbol is the feather. Her tarot card is adjustment, judgment. She's the wife of Thoth. Thoth's been a major. Isis and Thoth are my two main devotional god forms, and together they make Thosis, which we got a lot of mileage out of. Libra is her astrological heir, and in the Yod-He Vav-He formula, she's seen as the daughter, the fourth H. Heru is Horus, obviously. Infinite stars are Isis, and the Aeon of Horus runs concurrently with that of Maat. Like I said, she says Set is the Egyptian Saturn, Lord of Time. Not sure about that. Babylon, very important to me as I'm a member of Temple Babylon Choronzon. Peter Gray from Scarlet Imprint wrote a very good book called The Red Goddess, I think. So she describes Babylon, as channeled by Aleister Crowley, is a new god form, combining the strength of Joan of Arc, the ferocity of Boudica, the sexuality of Venus, the rowdiness of a Bacchante, and also identifies with Ishtar, Shakti, Shekinah. Baphomet also gets a mention. I didn't know an alternative name for him was Octinomos, god of the Templars, solve and coagulate. So it means break up and reform, basically. Baphomet is hermaphrodite, which is a feature of the Aeon of Horus, as obviously transsexuality is becoming normal, as it should be. There are so many different gender classifications now. Me and Richard T. Cole discussed this as a major feature of the Aeon of Horus, as well as digital technology. That's another major. We've literally stepped into another dimension when we can, how before could we meet people that I've met on social media and talk to them and learn from them? And I think we're moving increasingly into this digital future. I know a lot of people kind of fear that, but I think magicians have to be boundary openers, and magicians can't be afraid of nothing. We've got to go with human evolution, which is the goal of magic. Okay, so she also mentions Shaitan, who sounds a lot like Satan, and she does describe as the peacock god of the Yazdi people, and she says that's an analogue of Set, but once I've finished reading Seven Faces of Darkness, I really think Don Webb has the handle on Set, to be honest. So we've got hermaphrodite, which is both sexes. A Gyander is no sex. So Baphomet's got breasts and a penis. Gyander hasn't got nothing. She also describes the Ankh when she's describing Maat. Maat carries an Ankh, which is also called the Crux Ansata, cross with a loop for the top arm, I'm sure you all know, which represents a sandal strap, because she says the business of the gods is in going, which reminds me of Here to Go by William Burroughs. Crossing the abyss is transcending duality. Now, doesn't Peter Carroll and Liber Nolan Psychonaut talk about duality all the time? You know, you can't have one idea without its opposite idea kind of cancelling it out. So yeah, crossing the abyss is transcending duality, ego slaying, but you need to practice regularly, as density lends credibility to illusion. And of course the Lord of Illusion is Goronzon. And he's similar to Set, or similar, but Set is a liberator, Goronzon is more demonic. This is interesting. I'm very interested in evolution, and I'm sure we are still evolving. I think AI is going to be very important in our evolution, possibly, because we're so frail and we only live for such a short time. We really don't have time to achieve much. So I know a lot of kind of magical types hate the idea of AI and becoming cyborgish, but I just say, well, if that's the future, let it come down, babies. Humanity moves from pre-hominid to Enaton, which is, he's a representative of us in the future. And this is a quote. The magical current originates in the essence of things. As a species, we've been broadcasting our signature to the cosmos since the invention of speech. Since the advent of radio, television, and I've put in obviously now the internet, our signal has gained much more power. She describes the Garden of Eden as our pre-human animal consciousness. Too primitive for moral distinctions. Look at chimpanzees, etc. They get up to all sorts of naughty things. Too simple for guilt. Innocent of the capacity for sin, we emerged in the animal kingdom as the most neurologically complex species on the planet. We have not fulfilled the responsibilities of this fact. Our development has been uneven. Science and technology have outdistanced our wisdom, and we may pay for this imbalance with the doing of evil and suffering for and from it, which I think was a very good point. Have a little look in chat. Okay, she's yeah, okay, amen, Saroth, yes. Private Wars. Do you hail the false god Pan? I do indeed. Io Pan. The Saroth of Magick experiment, Aeon of Horus, Eye of Horus, absolutely, that's quite a good idea, that. Okay, it went quiet for you, Maggie, but it's still fine with Oswald, so I think we're okay. So, I've mentioned Liber Penny Penumbra, but it is the central document of Maat Magick. It's Nema's book of the law, basically. She describes it as a manual of transformative technology that uses wetware as hardware. Now, I'm not quite sure when she wrote this, but she wrote the astral net as modem and screen, and initiatory experience as programming. And that's a major theme with me, the 8th Circuit Leary-Wilson model from Prometheus Rising, where we are accidentally imprinted in Western society. Other societies have rites of passage, so they know when you're, through wisdom and just not being the West, they know when your imprints, especially at puberty, so they make sure that you get positive imprints. But we just leave our children and young people to just, we don't care about what they're imprinting, or most don't. And then I think we're getting into the practical stuff. So the banishing ritual is quite interesting. She doesn't use a pentagram, she uses a cross, which is kind of the mark of Aleister Crowley as the beast. So south in the name of Shaitan, southeast in the name of Heru Parkrat, east is Rahur Kuit, northeast is Hadit, north is Nuit, northwest is Maat, west is Babylon, southwest is Iwas. And then that's the abridged version. You know, you really need to get the book. I advise getting the book. I think I discussed the Feather and Flame either earlier or in my aborted broadcast, so I won't go into that. But there are 4 pronunciations of the word Ipsos, which was a received magical word of the Aeon of Maat. Bobby and I have talked about this because, and Groucho and Leah, they're doing their Horus Maat Lodge initiation round about now. I did mine many years ago. Mine was the solo version. They're doing the group version because there's 2 of them. I was helped tremendously by senior members of the Horus Maat Lodge. They talked me through it. It was a fantastic experience. I had to design 2 masks, I think. I'm sure it was 2. I certainly remember 1. So I bought like a cardboard, you get them in craft stores, just a blank grey paper mache mask, and then painted it with significant symbols and all that. There was wine, there was semen, there was fire, it was exciting. So I'm not going to go into the fire and feather ritual. I want to get to the... Okay, so you've got your regular tools: wand, hazel, ash or oak. Should reach from the elbow to the fingertips, a diameter of your thumb. Peel off the bark and scrape smooth, and then anoint with oil and breathe your own energy into your magical weapons. I've got a beautiful hazel wand in my little box back there. I seldomly use it. I generally use my dagger only. Chalice can be metal, glass, ceramic. Polish with a soft cloth. Breathe into it again. Sword or dagger. Length doesn't matter as long as it's sharp. A good way of consecrating a dagger or a sword is to plunge it into the earth, then you rinse with water, then you dry with fire, and then you suffumigate, I think is the word, with incense. So you're getting like the 4 elements: earth, water, fire, and incense for air. A pantacle, which I've got as well. I got a Golden Dawn one, which was hand painted and delivered, and I also did my own designs on that. That's a disc of wood, wax, metal, clay, or ceramic. I've also got a wax one back there, but I can't show you things when I've got the screen on. After mastering, that seems like a bit of a jump. Okay, so after mastering level 6, which is Tifereth, which I guess you have to, because she's got a section for each of the Sephiroth of the Tree of Life in the book, I guess you work through them until you get to Tifereth, and then that's when you can try and contact your Holy Guardian Angel, which is another very... no, it's not. It was around long before Crowley, Abramelin, and it'll be around forever, I guess. So now we get into sex magic, and this may be my last topic before I did want to get onto the forgotten old ones, actually. Okay. Sex Magick. She describes something called the 8th degree. which to magicians in the know is autoerotic sexuality, masturbating. Sex is an integral part of Maat magic. It makes available a tremendous power for workings of the will. Sex magic is the alchemy of which the old images of alembics and athanors were metaphors. The human body is the best alchemy lab available. When aroused, it manufactures complex chemical compounds. I'm getting ahead of myself. It manufactures chemical compounds that defend from microbial and viral infections, that regulate its own growth and stages of maturity, gives brains endorphinal pleasure, and provides adrenaline for strength to deal with nature. When aroused, our bodies secrete complex fluids that are active physically and astrally. Charged by DNA's will to replicate and change its combination, it's extraordinarily huge impulse for life to increase in complexity. I believe also all systems tend towards complexity. One of my favourite quotes. They carry the force of intent when used in magic. So the actual physical substance is very powerful. Hence cakes of light and all that sort of stuff. Use sex magic alone at first to attain mastery of its inner processes and understanding its dynamics before working with a partner. So there are two parts of sex magic, arousal to sublimation and arousal to orgasm. In sublimation, you take the energy of arousal and turn inward and upward through the levels of density to the end of inducing visionary trance. And now, I couldn't remember what Crowley called it, but it's eroto-comatose lucidity. That's a more excitatory method, but I couldn't remember it last week. Fluids are retained or reabsorbed. I've heard of, well, let's not go there. At the source, their energy is transformed to the cerebrospinal fluid that bathes the brain and spinal cord and is drawn upwards by the rise of Kundalini. Now, I haven't thought about Kundalini for a long time. I kind of wrote it off as a bit of a new agey thing, but I think there is some truth to it. I definitely, after that summer solstice trip in 2018, I felt like my Kundalini, all the symptoms they describe as having a Kundalini experience, I was experiencing like extremely high, good mood, felt like I was radiating power, music felt amazing, everything I touched seemed to turn to gold. It did eventually wear off. I'm so lazy with my practice nowadays, So, Kundalini is the force inherent in our spinal cord and brain that usually remains partly inactive. It can be fully activated by a number of practices, including pranayama, concentration, visualization, mantra meditation, etc. Kundalini is connected and can be induced to rise in stages by activating each chakra. Chakra is another thing that I haven't bothered with in a long time, in ascending orders. Chakras can be activated by being mindful of them during magic works of all types. So you think, okay, that's my throat chakra that speaks, my heart chakra that feels, my, on and on. So, orgasm. Take the energy of arousal and turn it outward. So you've got your inhibitive and you've got your excitative again. Take the energy of arousal and turn it outward and downward to Malkuth, level 10 she calls it, to manifest your true will through the intention of the particular working. In addition to their own potency, sexual fluids carry the power of the chakras. providing superb substance for anointing, charging talismans, amulets and sigils. We all know about the chaos magic practice of anointing your sigil with fluid, as well as a sacramental elixir, which means that you would consume it for the strength and health of the forgotten. I'm reading the next line. For the strength and the health of the mage. How's everyone going so far? I made it kundalini noodles with chakra cheese. Very good, Oswald. You're very, very correct. Right, so this is very interesting to me, that the forgotten ones. So we're almost finished. How long have we been going? No idea. So Nema, as usual, thinks of forgotten ones not as actual spirits, but as kind of principles. So she is guilty of psychologicalizing magic to a great degree. But she also believes in spirits, so I ain't arguing. So the forgotten ones, this is how she puts it, quote, civilization, law, manners form fragile veneer over survival urges in the human unconscious. And we're, separated from the rest of the animal kingdom. Quote, man is a rational animal. Reason rarely prevails in love and war. In extreme circumstances, fuck reason. It's all about feeling, doing, surviving. Most human actions and reactions are directed by our survival urges, with reason providing rationalizations to satisfy the conscience. So, I did that because of this. I had to do that because of this. Intellect and ego delude themselves into believing they rule human life. This is another thing, even my book on Kabbalah Magick mentions this. It's everywhere in magic. That the left brain, your kind of logical, computational brain, overrules the right brain, which is the holistic, more magical. And if you're left-handed, it means your right brain is in charge more than your left. And I am, of course, left-handed. Yep. To satisfy the conscience, intellect and ego delude themselves into believing they rule human life, governmental decisions and social interactions. Nema calls survival urges the forgotten ones, because our intellects tend to forget them or trivialize them. Approach the forgotten ones after discovering your true will and meeting your holy guardian angel. I don't agree with that. I think in ancestor worship, I've got an altar for my ancestors over there, although I've been out of incense for a while. So rooted in our neurosystem, our urges are incredibly powerful. Don't frustrate or oppose them, but directed to work in ways determined by will in the light of intellect and intuition. So there is an invocation of the forgotten ones. But I am now going to read my experience with the forgotten ones, which happened, I've called it Samhain, the Dark Feast, Part 1, and this was on November the 3rd, 2018. So 2018 was the big psychedelic year, although we're doing mushrooms again we did it in the spring equinox. We did it in the autumn equinox, and we'll be doing it at the winter solstice. So invocation of Belleroth and Thosis, which are two personal spirits, gods of mine. Ancient gods, great old ones, howling forgotten spirits of cold and hunger, dark satanic temples and palaces of the lords of misrule, ancestor spirits and shades of the dead, Hail to you who have no tongues to speak. Ipsos, Thosis. This is truly the Kali Yuga. I saw the ages of Wu-Man spiral out in fractal forms, unfolding like the 1,000-petaled lotus, like a snake with a single eye, shedding its skin. I sloughed my language identity and lunar Saturnian body with its fragile human primatism, and saw myself as the Cynophilus, the ape of Thosis, hurling a gibberish language at the moon. I realized that everything I'd been up to that moment had been a lie. I was crushed and compressed by huge cosmic forces, torn apart and dismembered. I had to die before shamanic rebirth. My egoic primate behavior was a reversal of all it thought it stood for. It was not wise or holy, throwing words at concepts in an attempt to make flat the three-dimensional, multi-textured world of experience. Angels are expressions of divinity beyond normal human consciousness and cannot be understood from 3 dimensions. The sacrament allows us to enter the non-verbal realm of undiluted meaning. Time is Babylon, ravished every hour. We mediate experience through language. Symbols are meta-language. The beings known as angels and demons are contacted through precise correspondence of signs, shapes, colours and scent. In the lower astrals are murky energies and spider beings and unspeakable rites. Wotan leads the forces of darkness, loosed on the night of the wild hunt. Barbarous names are uttered in places of the desolate. The forgotten old ones haven't been fed. The ancestor spirits cry out for the attention of the living. The web is an apt metaphor, for I was at the centre of a tangle of loving interconnectedness. Relationships with people and spirits and other people's spirits. In the shamanscape, it's not just what you know, who you know counts. You got some friends here, boy, said the dreadlocked demon guard. Pillars of mercy and severity explode the dialectic. Every idea contains its opposite. By smashing up opposing qualities together, we birth our own apocalypse. Like Ezekiel and Enoch, I saw the wheels of fire and the terrible countenance of God. I saw letters of flaming Hebrew and Sanskrit. I made direct contact with the netters of time, gravity, energy itself. I dined with dark companions, Baphomet, Pan, horn gods of the forest and the mountaintop. I saw the devil as Capricornus, the leaping goat, and danced at the witch's sabbat. I made love to the crone Hecate, who became beautiful and vivacious as we embraced. The spider being was no mere astral parasite, but a terrible Geigeresque monster with double jaws and gnashing teeth, pure malevolence and hatred. Ghostly skulls, animal and human, with ragged jaws, try to sound, but have no tongues. A spectral horse, frozen in the silent scream of Picasso's Guernica. Witches burned at the stake make furious and deadly curses. I was being pulled apart by the monstrous, immutable laws and forces of the cliff-off. Unbalanced energy and astral shells swirled around me. I had to reach the other side of Daath. I was rising. Blue-white fleshes were like an electrical storm behind my eyes. Everything is holy. I saw the fractal geometric machinery of the universe, vast and inhuman, and no God here. Whatever sparked this terrible, astonishing chain of events is beyond primate understanding. I understood how polarity is the engine of creation in a continuum. Black, white, negative, positive, the terrific energy of opposites. I was getting higher, leaving the lower astrals and going to the plane of mystery. I saw that all systems of attainment were equal and valid. I understood in images and a kind of body electricity that made an audible humming sound. I tried to match the tone, and this lifted me even further to a place of complete non-being. A samadhi, I think. The uniting of subject and object, which occurs as the shell personality dissolves and the ego, for a timeless nanosecond, is shed. I had to birth the Orphic egg, become my solar self. The quickest way is straight up, said the voice of what could be my daemon. And that will probably do for tonight, chaps. I hope you've enjoyed it. The flute player from Hawkwind died. I think his name is Nick Turner. He was a bit of a Maat head. So a speedy journey to the Western lands for that man. Okay, thank you everyone. I'll play out with a lilting little tune, and then I'll see you next Saturday. Thank you so much for everyone that showed up. Maggie, Oswald, CW Chanter was in for a while. Of course, my dear friend Groucho. So yeah, Groucho, we're going to be doing the show soon. I'm eagerly awaiting my copy of Listening Post Alpha Year 1. I think you've already got yours, haven't you? Can't wait to see it. Thank you, Maggie. Thank you, Groucho. Thank you, Oswald. Thank you, CW. I'm really starting to enjoy these live streams, so thank you very much. But that will do for tonight. Goodbye.